Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. The late September sunset painted long shadows across Cassidy's bedroom floor as she stood before her suitcase, meticulously folding another silk blouse. Her fingers trembled slightly, betraying the calm exterior she fought to maintain. The house around her was quiet, too quiet, save for the distant hum of Adler's computer from his home office at the hall tomorrow morning. She would leave for what she told her husband was a week-long business conference in Seattle. The lie had fallen from her lips 3 weeks ago during dinner, as smooth as the wine they'd been drinking. Adler had barely looked up from his phone, offering only a distracted nod and mumbled acknowledgement. That moment of inattention had strengthened her resolve, silencing the guilt that occasionally surfaced when she thought about Dalton waiting for her at the airport tomorrow. Cassidy caught her reflection in the full-length mirror beside her dresser. At 35, she still turned heads, something Dalton never failed to mention during their secret lunch meetings and stolen moments in hotel bars. Her dark hair fell in perfectly styled waves past her shoulders, and her fitted blazer accentuated a figure maintained by religious dedication to early morning Pilates classes that she realized with a twinge of guilt. Adler had always supported her attending, even when they cut into their increasingly rare morning time together. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, and her heart skipped a beat. A message from Dalton lit up the screen. "Can't wait for tomorrow. These past months have been torture without you. The resort in Maui is confirmed Ocean View Suite." A smile tugged at her lips as she typed back, "Just one more night. Everything's arranged." She glanced guiltily at the doorway, but the house remained silent. Adler was probably absorbed in another case file, his dedication to his law practice both admirable and, lately, convenient for her extramarital activities the past few days. He'd been more withdrawn than usual, barely speaking during their shared meals. This morning he'd left for work before dawn, something about an important client meeting. But when she called his office around lunch to maintain their usual facade of marital normalcy, his secretary had mentioned he'd taken the day off. The information had unsettled her briefly, but she pushed the concern aside, attributing his absence to preparation for an upcoming trial. Cassidy zipped her suitcase closed, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet room. She packed carefully, new lingerie hidden beneath business attire, swimsuits concealed by formal wear. Every item chosen to maintain her cover story while serving its true purpose with Dalton. Still packing, Adler's voice from the doorway made her jump. She turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the carpet. In the dimming light, his features were hard to read. "Just finishing up," she replied, striving for casualness. "You startled me." "Did I?" His tone was flat, unlike his usual warm baritone. He stepped into the room, his movements deliberate. "Need any help?" "No, I'm all set." Cassidy busied herself with straightening already straight items on her dresser. "How was your day?" "You left so early this morning." "Productive." He moved to stand behind her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, the one she'd given him last Christmas. "Very productive." Something in his voice made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. She met his eyes in the mirror, but his expression remained unreadable. For a moment, they stood frozen in this tableau, husband and wife, separated by mere inches and countless lies. "I need to run to the pharmacy," she said finally, breaking the tension. "Last-minute travel necessities." "Of course you do." He stepped back, giving her space to move past him. "Don't be long." The drive to the pharmacy was quick. The streets of their suburban neighborhood bathed in the golden light of evening. Cassidy's hands were tight on the steering wheel as she pulled into the nearly empty parking lot. Inside, she wandered the aisles aimlessly, picking up travel-sized toiletries she didn't need. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Dalton. "Thinking about you. Tomorrow can't come soon enough." She smiled at the screen, imagining his face, his touch, the way he looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. It was so different from the way Adler looked through her lately, as if she were just another piece of furniture in their perfectly decorated house. The teenage cashier barely glanced at her as she checked out, absorbed in her own phone, not noticing Cassidy's distraction. Outside, the sky had darkened to deep purple. Streetlights flickered to life, one by one. When she pulled back into her driveway 20 minutes later, something felt off. The house looked different somehow. The warm yellow light that usually spilled from Adler's office window was gone. Her heart rate picked up as she noticed his car still in the driveway, gleaming black in the gathering darkness. Cassidy's heels clicked against the pavement as she approached the front door, each step echoing in the unusual stillness of the evening. The sound seemed to mock her, a countdown to something she couldn't quite grasp. The door swung open silently beneath her touch. The foyer was dark. The familiar shapes of their carefully chosen furniture transformed into looming shadows. Adler, the living room light flicked on. Her husband sat in his leather armchair, his 6'2" frame coiled with tension. Beside him, her carefully packed suitcases lay open, their contents scattered across the floor like evidence at a crime scene. Her heart stopped. "Sit down, Cassidy." His voice was low, controlled, dangerously calm. It was his courtroom voice, the one he used when cross-examining witnesses he knew were lying. "What are you doing?" Her voice came out higher than intended, panic creeping in at the edges. "Why are my things?" "Sit down." Each word was carved from ice. She sank into the couch across from him, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. The pharmacy bag slipped from her fingers, rolling forgotten across the hardwood floor. Adler's dark eyes never left her face, studying her with the same intensity he reserved for particularly difficult cases. "How long?" he asked simply. "I don't." He held up a hand, the wedding band on his finger catching the light mockingly. 6 months of deleted texts, hotel receipts, restaurant charges. "You got sloppy, Cassidy." His laugh was hollow, devoid of any warmth. "Or maybe you wanted to get caught. Did you think I wouldn't notice the second phone in your gym bag? The mysterious lunch meetings that ran late. The credit card charges from hotels when you were supposedly working late." The room spun around her. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Adler stood, his height suddenly imposing as he towered over her. "Get in the car." "What?" "We're going for a drive." "Adler, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain." He moved toward the door, car keys jingling in his hand. "Get in the car, or I call your mother and tell her everything right now." The mention of her mother sent ice through Cassidy's veins. Reeves was old school, traditional to her core. The shame of a cheating daughter would destroy her. Cassidy stood on shaky legs and followed Adler to his car, her designer heels suddenly unstable beneath her. The drive was silent. Streetlights cast alternating patterns of light and shadow across their faces. Cassidy's mind raced, trying to piece together where it had all gone wrong. She'd been so careful, or so she thought. Each deleted text, each carefully planned meeting with Dalton, each lie about working late. She'd orchestrated it all like a symphony, but somehow Adler had known. When they turned onto the familiar tree-lined street of her childhood home, Cassidy's stomach dropped. "Why are we here?" Adler didn't answer. He pulled into the circular driveway of the sprawling Victorian house where she'd grown up. Despite the late hour, lights glowed warmly in the windows. Her mother was awake. Reeves opened the door before they reached it, her silver hair pulled back in its usual elegant knot. Her expression was unreadable as she took in the sight of her daughter and son-in-law standing on her doorstep at 9 in the evening. "I was wondering when you'd arrive," Reeves said softly, her eyes lingering on Cassidy's face. Adler reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small wooden box, its surface worn smooth with age. Cassidy had never seen it before, but something about it made her skin crawl. He handed it to Reeves without a word. Her mother's fingers closed around the box, knuckles white with tension. "It's time she understood," Reeves said, her voice heavy with something that sounded like regret. Before Cassidy could process what was happening, Adler turned and walked back to his car, his footsteps measured, deliberate, the same way he walked in court when he delivered a devastating piece of evidence. She watched, frozen, as he slid into the driver's seat without a backward glance. "Adler, wait," the words burst from her before she could stop them, but the engine was already roaring to life. Within moments, his taillights disappeared around the corner, leaving her alone with her mother and a mysterious box that seemed to pulse with unspoken secrets. "Come inside, Cassidy." Reeves' voice cut through the evening air like a steel blade. It was the same tone she'd used when Cassidy was young, the one that brooked no argument. The porch light cast harsh shadows across her mother's face, deepening the lines around her mouth and eyes. Had those lines always been there, or had they been carved by secrets like the one clutched in her hands? Cassidy followed her mother into the house, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors she'd once slid across in sock feet as a child. The foyer still smelled of lemon furniture polish and the faintest hint of roses, her mother's signature scent. Family portraits lined the walls, chronologically arranged from her childhood through her wedding day. She couldn't bring herself to look at them now. The antique grandfather clock in the corner ticked away the seconds, each sound like a hammer falling on her racing heart. It was the same clock that had counted down the minutes until curfew in her teenage years, chiming through family dinners and holiday gatherings. Now its steady rhythm felt like an executioner's drumbeat. Reeves led her to the formal living room, where crystal decanters caught the light from the old brass lamps, throwing prismatic patterns across the Victorian wallpaper. Nothing in this room had changed since Cassidy's childhood. The same heavy drapes framed the windows, the same Persian rug covered the floor, the same family photos crowded the mantelpiece. Time stood still here, preserving memories like insects in amber. "Sit," Reeves commanded, gesturing to the velvet chair where Cassidy had once posed for piano recital photos, where she'd later sit to tell her parents she was engaged to Adler. The wooden box sat between them like a bomb waiting to detonate. Cassidy sank into the chair, her designer dress feeling suddenly garish against the aged velvet. Her mother stood by the fireplace, one hand resting on the mantel where generations of family photos stood sentinel. The flames cast dancing shadows across her face, making her expression even harder to read. "How did he know?" Cassidy whispered, more to herself than to her mother. "I was so careful." Reeves' laugh was bitter, startling in its harshness. "Your husband is a brilliant man, Cassidy. Did you really think you could fool him forever? Did you think he wouldn't notice the changes in you? The way you stopped looking him in the eye, the mysterious phone calls, the sudden business trips. We grew apart." Cassidy defended weakly, her voice small in the large room. "He was always working, always distant." "Enough." Reeves' voice cracked like a whip. "You're not the first woman in this family to use that excuse, and I pray you'll be the last." The word betrayal hung in the air between them, heavy and accusatory. Cassidy flinched. "Your father would be ashamed." Reeves continued, each word precise and cutting. "Thank God he didn't live to see this." "Don't," Cassidy whispered. "Please don't bring Dad into this." "Why not? He's as much a part of this story as anyone." Reeves' fingers tightened around the box. "More than you know." She thrust the box toward Cassidy. "Open it. See what you're really a part of." The box was heavier than it looked, warm from her mother's grip. As Cassidy's fingers found the catch, a sudden chill ran through her. Whatever was inside this box had brought her husband here tonight, had put that look of grim satisfaction on his face as he drove away. Whatever secrets it held had been waiting for this moment, like a spider in its web. The brass catch resisted for a moment, then gave way with a soft click that seemed to echo in the quiet room. As Cassidy lifted the lid, the hinges creaked a sound like a distant scream. Inside, folded with precise care that spoke of frequent handling, lay a vintage dress in deep burgundy silk. Even in the dim light, the fabric held a sheen that hinted at its former glory. The material whispered against her fingers as she lifted it, releasing a musty scent of age and secrets. August 15, 1985. Reeves said, her voice carrying the weight of buried memories. I remember the exact date I first wore that dress. Some dates burn themselves into your memory, Cassidy. They become the markers between before and after. It's beautiful, Cassidy, she murmured, running her fingers along the intricate seams. But I don't understand what this has to do with. Keep looking, Reeves interrupted, moving to stand by the fireplace. The flames cast dancing shadows across her face, highlighting the lines that years of carrying secrets had etched around her mouth. There's more. Beneath the dress lay a stack of photographs, their edges worn yellow with time. Cassidy's hands trembled as she lifted the first one. The image showed her mother, decades younger, wearing the same burgundy dress at what appeared to be a charity gala. She was laughing, head thrown back in genuine joy, while a man who definitely wasn't Cassidy's father held her close. He was handsome in a classic way, tall, dark-haired with an intimate smile that seemed meant only for Reeves. Who is he? Cassidy's voice cracked on the question. James Whittaker. Reeves moved closer, her fingers tracing the edge of the photograph. He was brilliant, charming, ambitious, and very married, just like your Dalton. Cassidy's head snapped up so fast her neck cracked. How did you know about Dalton? Reeves' laugh held no humor. Adler did his research thoroughly. Every hotel meeting, every secret phone call, every planned trip to Maui. He came to me 3 weeks ago, asking questions about our family history. That's when I knew it was happening again. What was happening again? The curse, Reeves said softly. The pattern we can't seem to break. Instead of explaining further, she pointed to the next photograph in the stack. This one showed her mother in the same dress, visibly pregnant, gazing up at James with undisguised adoration. The timestamp in the corner read December 1985. That understanding dawned slowly, like ice spreading across a pond. No, Cassidy whispered, her fingers going numb. You can't mean your father, the man who raised you, who loved you unconditionally, who taught you to ride a bike, and checked under your bed for monsters. He wasn't your biological father. Reeves' voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she reached for the crystal decanter on the sideboard. James was. The room tilted dangerously. Cassidy gripped the edge of the chair, her knuckles white against the aged velvet. You're lying. Am I? Reeves poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal glass. Look in the mirror, Cassidy. Really look. You have his eyes, his smile. I see him every time I look at you. So did Howard. Howard, Cassidy repeated numbly. The name felt foreign on her tongue. She'd never called him anything but Dad. He knew. Of course he knew. Reeves took a long sip of her drink. Just like Adler knows everything about you and Dalton. Men like them. They see everything. They just wait for the right moment to show their hand. How? When did he find out? Reeves settled into a high-backed chair, the firelight catching the silver in her hair. It was a Tuesday evening, much like this one. Howard came home early from work, something he never did. I should have known then that something was wrong. He walked into our bedroom, while I was getting ready for what I told him was a charity committee meeting. She gestured to the burgundy dress. I was wearing that. He stood in the doorway, just watching me apply my lipstick. Then he said, very quietly, Who is James Catherine? What did you do? Cassidy. Reeves continued, He was just a colleague. Howard, let me finish the lie. Let me dig myself deeper with every word. Then he opened his briefcase and laid out everything. Photos from the private investigator, hotel receipts, phone records. Reeves' hand tightened around her glass. He'd known for weeks, been gathering evidence, building his case like the lawyer he was. Sound familiar? You never told me. Cassidy said, her voice hollow. All those family dinners, holiday gatherings, my wedding day. It was all built on lies. The love wasn't a lie. Reeves snapped. ice cubes clinking sharply in her glass. That's what makes this all so much worse. Howard loved you with every fiber of his being. You were his greatest joy and his deepest wound, all wrapped into one precious package. She set her glass down with deliberate care. Do you remember your 16th birthday? How Howard spent months restoring that vintage Mustang for you? Of course I remember. He worked every weekend. Because the garage was the only place he could cry without anyone seeing. Reeves cut in. I found him there one night, just sitting in that half-finished car. He looked at me and said, "She has James' hands on the steering wheel. But by God, she'll learn to drive from me." The memory hit Cassidy like a physical blow. Howard spent nights in parking lots with her father, learning to handle the manual transmission. His patient voice guiding her, his proud smile when she finally got it right. All while knowing. Her phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Dalton's name lit up the screen. "Answer it," Reeves commanded. "Put it on speaker." "Mom, I don't." Cassidy started. "Answer." With trembling fingers, Cassidy hit the speaker button. Dalton's voice filled the room, tight with controlled panic. "Where are you? I've been trying to reach you for hours. Everything's set for tomorrow. Flights, hotel, the whole package. But you've gone dark. What's going on?" Reeves' eyes narrowed at the sound of his voice. Before Cassidy could respond, her mother leaned forward. "Tell him you're pregnant." "What?" Cassidy hissed. "I'm not telling him." Reeves insisted, her voice hard. "See what kind of man you're destroying your life for." Cassidy stared at her mother, then back at the phone. "Dalton," she said carefully, her heart hammering. "Something's happened. I think I'm pregnant." The silence that followed stretched for 3 excruciating heartbeats. "Are you sure?" His voice had changed completely, turned cold and calculating. I think so. I mean, I haven't confirmed it yet, but we'll take care of it." The words felt like ice. "You know I can't. My position at the firm, my family. We talked about this, Cassidy. No complications. But I thought, I don't think. Just handle it, and do it quietly." His voice dropped lower. "My wife's already suspicious. I can't afford any scandals right now." The line went dead. Reeves' laugh was without humor. "James said almost the exact same thing to me. Take care of it, Catherine. I can't afford complications right now." She reached for another photo from the scatter pile. "Would you like to see what happened next?" The image showed James with another woman, both smiling at a restaurant Cassidy recognized as Lucirk. The date stamp read 1986, a year after the photo of him with her pregnant mother. He had a type, Reeves said flatly. Married women from good families. Low risk, high reward, just like your Dalton has a type. "Did you really think you were special, that you were the first?" She pulled out another photo, James with a different woman, then another and another. "I hired my own investigator after Howard confronted me," Reeves explained. "I found out I was just the latest in a long line. James has been doing this for years, finding unhappy wives, making them feel special, then moving on when things got messy." Her eyes locked on Cassidy's, a sound familiar. Cassidy's phone buzzed again, this time with an email notification from Adler Kingston. Subject: "Your choices, your consequences." "Open it." Reeves commanded, "Read it aloud." Cassidy's voice trembled as she read. "By the time you read this, I will have transferred all joint accounts to my name only, removed you from all insurance policies, canceled your country club membership, informed the charity board of your resignation, contacted our friends and family about our impending divorce. Your belongings will be packed and moved to storage by morning. The address will be sent to your mother's house. Don't attempt to contact me. Don't try to explain. Every word you've spoken for the past 6 months has been a lie. Nothing you say now will change that. You chose your path. Now walk it alone." "Adler, he's been planning this," Cassidy whispered. "All this time, Of course he has, just like Howard planned every detail of my downfall. Reeves stood, moving to a small writing desk in the corner. Would you like to see the letter your father left me? Reeves unfolded the letter with practiced care, as if she'd read it countless times before. The paper was thin with age, the creases well worn. Howard wrote this the night he discovered everything, she said, smoothing the paper with trembling fingers. I found it on my vanity table right next to this cursed dress. Listen carefully, Cassidy. This is your future speaking. By the time you read this, I will have dismantled every aspect of the life we built together. The only thing I cannot erase is our child, the innocent result of your betrayal. I will remain in this marriage for appearance's sake. I will raise this child as my own, but make no mistake, we are finished. The woman I love died the moment I saw those photos. Don't bother trying to explain. Every explanation is just another lie. Howard. Cassidy's phone erupted with notifications before she could respond. Text messages flooded in, each one a new blow from Marin. There's a moving truck outside your house. Cassidy, what's happening? From her sister Autumn. How could you do this to Adler? Don't bother coming to Sunday dinner anymore. From her boss. Need to see you first thing tomorrow. Urgent matter regarding your position. He's erasing me, Cassidy whispered, watching the messages pile up. Everything we built. No, Reeves corrected sharply. He's executing justice. There's a difference. She moved to the window, staring out into the darkness. Howard did the same thing. Within 24 hours, he had frozen all our accounts, canceled my credit cards, informed our entire social circle, removed me from every club membership, charity board, and social committee. Called my family to tell them exactly what I'd done. She turned back to Cassidy. The difference is Howard stayed for you. Adler has no such obligation. He's free to cut you out completely. Cassidy's phone rang again. Dalton, her finger hovered over the ignore button. Answer it, Reeves commanded. Let's hear what your future has to say now. Cassidy put the phone on speaker just as another email notification appeared. This one from Dalton's wife, Eleanor. The subject line read, "Found he's interesting." Dalton, Cassidy answered, her voice shaking. You vindictive. He snarled, all pretense of affection gone. Did you send those photos to Eleanor yourself? Trying to force my hand. What? No, she's everything. Every text, every photo, every hotel receipt. My partners have been called for an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Do you have any idea what you've done? I didn't send. My teenage children are going to see these photos. Their friends' parents are on the charity board with Eleanor. Do you understand what this means? Reeves picked up another photo from the floor. This one showing James at a school function, deliberately turning away from her mother. Your reputation is gone. Dalton continued, his voice cold. You try to drag me down with you. Well, congratulations. You've ruined everything. Dalton, please don't contact me again. Ever. I've already told Eleanor it was all you. You pursued me. You manipulated the situation. She'll believe me. I've got 12 years of marriage and 3 kids. What do you have? A moving truck in your driveway. The line went dead. Familiar. Reeves mused, swirling the ice in her glass. James said almost the same things. You're hysterical, Catherine. Nobody will believe you over me. I've got a wife. A career, reputation. She smiled bitterly. He was right. Nobody did believe me. Another email notification lit up Cassidy's phone from her firm's HR department. Dear Ms. Kingston, due to recent events and the dissolution of our partnership with Kingston Law, your position at Maxwell & Partners has been terminated effective immediately. Please do not report to the office. Your personal items will be shipped to the address on file. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. How did he move so fast? Cassidy whispered, staring at the screen. He's been moving pieces in place for weeks, Reeves replied. Just like Howard did. Men like them. They don't act on impulse. They plan, they prepare, they execute. She picked up the burgundy dress, holding it up to the firelight. You know what the worst part is? The part that will haunt you for years to come. Cassidy looked up, tears blurring her vision. You'll never know if it was worth it. Every memory with Dalton will be tainted by what you lost. Every moment of passion will be overshadowed by the destruction it caused. You'll lie awake at night, replaying every decision, every choice that led you here, and you'll never be sure if those stolen moments of happiness were worth the lifetime of regret that followed. Another text lit up Cassidy's phone from the head of their country club's social committee. Emergency meeting called. Your membership has been revoked. Eleanor Prescott will be taking over your position as event chair. They're choosing sides already. Cassidy whispered, watching the notifications multiply. How did everyone find out so quickly? Adler didn't just plan the logistics. Reeves explained, settling back into a chair. He planned the narrative. Right now, across town, every influential person in your social circle is getting a carefully crafted message. Not from him directly, of course. He's too smart for that. She reached for another photograph, this one showing a young Howard at a social function, deliberately turning his back on Reeves. By tomorrow morning, you'll be the cautionary tale at every coffee meeting, every tennis match, every lunch reservation. The whispers will follow you everywhere. Cassidy's phone buzzed again. A message from their neighbor. Moving trucks just left. The house is empty. Call me if you need anything. Though I understand if Adler doesn't want you to have contact with us anymore. The house. Cassidy stood abruptly. He can't just. Reeves cut in. Whose name is on it? Cassidy sank back down as realization hit. The house had been Adler's before their marriage. She'd never insisted on adding her name to the deed, trusting in there forever. Your car, Reeves continued mercilessly. The lease is probably through his firm. Your health insurance, his family's policy. Your social standing, his connections. You spent 6 months building a fantasy with Dalton, while Adler spent those same months systematically preparing to dismantle every aspect of your life. As if on cue, Cassidy's phone lit up with an email from their family doctor. Due to the termination of your insurance coverage, we'll need to cancel your upcoming appointments. It's not just material things, Reeves warned, reaching for the stack of photos again. Watch what happens to your friendships. Women you thought were close confidants will vanish. They'll side with Adler partly because he's the wrong party, but mostly because their husbands do business with him. She spread out several photos, creating a timeline of isolation. This was my life after Howard exposed the affair. Photo by photo, you can see my world shrinking. This Christmas party, last one I was invited to. This charity luncheon, they asked me to resign my position. This school function. The other mothers wouldn't let their children play with you, but you stayed married. Cassidy, she protested weakly. Dad stayed. Howard stayed because of you, Reeves corrected sharply. And believe me, there were days that were worse than divorce. Living with a man who could barely look at you, who flinched at your touch, who spoke to you only when absolutely necessary. Do you know what it's like to live for 20 years with someone who hates you? Before Cassidy could respond, her phone chimed with a calendar notification. Reminder. Kingston family Sunday dinner canceled permanently. Your sister will side with him. Reeves predicted, watching Cassidy's face crumple. Autumn always idolized Adler. She'll see this as you destroying not just your marriage, but her relationship with the brother she never had. The truth of this hit home as another text appeared from Autumn. How could you after everything Adler has done for this family? Don't call me. Don't text. I can't even look at you right now. Cassidy's hand shook as she scrolled through her phone. Friends were unfollowing her on social media. Group chats were going silent. Email after email arrived, each one severing another connection to her carefully constructed life. The worst part, Reeves said softly, is that tomorrow Dalton will walk into his office like nothing happened. His wife will accept his explanation that you were obsessed with him, that you pursued him, that he was the victim of your manipulation. He'll keep his job, his family, his reputation. He might face some awkward moments, some raised eyebrows, but he'll survive. She pointed to a final photo, James at another woman's wedding, just 2 years after Cassidy's birth. Men like them always do. Cassidy's phone lit up with one final message from Adler's mother. I've always thought of you as a daughter. That's what makes this betrayal so painful. Please don't contact us again. Some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt. What do I do now? Cassidy asked, her voice small against the crushing silence. Reeves stood, gathering the scattered photos. She picked up the burgundy dress. Do what I did, she said finally. You survive. You wake up every morning and face a world that sees you differently. You learn to live with the whispers, the turned backs, the lost friendships. You build a new life from the ashes of the one you burned down. She held out the dress. Keep this not as a reminder of what you lost, but as a warning of what betrayal costs. Maybe someday you'll sit across from your own daughter and explain why trust, once broken, can never truly be repaired. The grandfather clock struck midnight, its chimes echoing through the house like funeral bells. Cassidy stared at the burgundy dress, understanding at last that she hadn't just lost her marriage. She'd inherited a legacy of destruction, a pattern of pain that would follow her long after the dust of her shattered life settled in her hand. Her phone lit up one last time with an email from Adler's personal account. Cassidy, by now you understand the full scope of what's happening. Every decision has consequences. Every betrayal has a price. I love the woman I thought you were, but that woman was a lie. The divorce papers will arrive tomorrow morning. Don't fight them. Don't try to explain. Don't ask our friends to intercede. It's over. You chose your path the first time you met him for lunch. Now walk it alone. Adler. The email blurred as tears finally fell around her. The wreckage of her life lay before her. Scattered photos of her mother's past mistakes mirroring her own. The burgundy dress that had witnessed 2 generations of betrayal, and the impossible weight of a future irreversibly altered by her choices. Welcome, Reeves said softly, to the other side of betrayal. 2 weeks crawled by like years. Cassidy sat in her childhood bedroom surrounded by the mocking remnants of her former innocence. Cheerleading trophies gathered dust on shelves, golden figures frozen mid-leap, prom photos smiling from corkboards, teenage Cassidy radiant in her first formal dress, her college graduation photo hanging beside them, she and Adler beaming at the camera, his arm protective around her waist. Each memory now felt like a scene from someone else's life. The thick manila envelope that arrived that morning lay unopened on her old desk, its crisp edges and formal typing announcing its purpose: divorce papers. Beside it sat a smaller envelope containing a single key and an address, the location of a storage unit across town where the remains of her married life now lay sad and neat, labeled boxes. Her mother's house had become both sanctuary and prison. The same walls that had witnessed her childhood dreams now held her adult nightmares. Each creak of the floorboards, each tick of the grandfather clock reminded her of all she'd lost. A news alert buzzed on her new phone. She'd been forced to change numbers after Adler cut off her old one. The headline made her blood run cold. Breaking. Senior partner at Prescott and Associates resigns amid scandal. Below was Dalton's face, wearing that practiced smile she'd once thought was reserved for her. The photo showed him with his wife Eleanor, their 3 children arranged in a perfect family tableau, his hand possessively on Eleanor's shoulder, wedding ring clearly visible. The same hand that had traced patterns on Cassidy's skin in countless hotel rooms. Despite his meteoric rise at the prestigious firm, the article read, sources close to Mr. Prescott suggest a pattern of inappropriate relationships with married women in the community. This isn't the first time such allegations have surfaced. I see you found out. Reeves' voice came from the doorway. She held 2 steaming cups of coffee, offering one to Cassidy. I did some digging after Eleanor's initial call. Want to know what I discovered about your perfect lover? Cassidy's hands trembled as she took the cup. What do you mean? Reeves settled into the window seat, morning light catching the silver in her hair. She pulled out a folder, the kind Howard had once used for his case files. 3 previous incidents, all carefully buried. Money and influence can hide almost anything, she said. Almost. She extracted several newspaper clippings, laying them out like tarot cards predicting a future that had already come true. Sarah Mitchell, 2019, wife of Dr. Thomas Mitchell, chief of surgery at Metropolitan General. Marriage ended after affair with unnamed law partner. Rebecca Collins, 2021, social chair of Westbrook Country Club. Divorced following indiscretions with married attorney. There were others. Reeves continued, her voice clinical, less documented, but the pattern is clear. All married women from prominent families, all with something significant to lose. Stop. Cassidy whispered. But they look familiar. But they don't know about it. Reeves pressed on. Let me guess. He took you to Lou Meridian, always the corner suite on the 12th floor, room service champagne, specific view. Click. Cassidy's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. How did you? Because that's where he took Sarah. And Rebecca, probably others we don't know about. Reeves extracted another paper, an email printout. This arrived an hour ago from Eleanor. You should read it yourself. The paper crinkled as Cassidy took it. Dear Catherine, I thought you should know the full scope of what your daughter destroyed herself for. Dalton broke down last night after the board meeting. Confessed everything, not just about Cassidy, but about all of them. The firm is bundling him off to a discreet rehabilitation facility, where he'll supposedly be treated for an issue that lets everyone save face. He was quite candid about Cassidy specifically. Said she was the easiest to seduce, so desperate for attention that she overlooked all the obvious red flags. Said she knew there might be others, but convinced herself she was different. Said she practically threw herself at him after that first lunch meeting. That I almost pity her, Reeves continued. Almost. The firm will release a statement about his personal health issues requiring a leave of absence. He'll emerge in 6 months, tanned and repentant, with a story about finding peace or mindfulness, or whatever's trendy. Then he'll probably write a book about overcoming addiction, do the talk show circuit, reinvent himself as a motivational speaker. Meanwhile, your daughter, well, I'm sure you know how this story ends. You've lived it yourself, haven't you? Eleanor's rehab, Cassidy said, the paper crumpling in her fist. He gets to hide in some luxury facility, while I sit here watching my life burn to the ground. Reeves finished, sitting down. Her coffee cup clinked sharply. Of course he does. Men like Dalton always find soft places to land. Rehab, therapy, spiritual awakening, whatever shelter. Let them wait out the storm. She pulled out her iPad, opening a browser. Look at this. 3 hours ago, Prescott and Associates released their official statement. The firm's sleek website displayed a carefully worded message. Our colleague Dalton Prescott has taken a leave of absence to address personal health concerns. We support his decision to seek treatment and look forward to his eventual return. The firm's commitment to our clients remains unchanged. They're protecting him, Cassidy whispered. Just like James's firm protected him. Reeves' laugh was bitter. Want to know what your biological father did when Howard exposed our affair? Volunteered for Doctors Without Borders, spent 6 months vaccinating children in Africa, came back with a tan, and a dramatic story about finding his purpose. His wife took him back. His practice flourished. The whispers died down. She opened another tab, showing a decades-old newspaper clipping. James beams from the photo, accepting an award for humanitarian service. This was taken 8 months after I told him I was pregnant with you. Look at his face. Do you see any trace of guilt? Any sign that he destroyed a family? Did you ever confront him after he came back? Once, Reeves' fingers tightened around her coffee cup. I waited outside his office, wanted him to at least acknowledge you existed. Nobody said, Catherine, you need to move on. We both made mistakes, but I found forgiveness. Perhaps you should try therapy." A sharp knock at the bedroom door made them both jump. Autumn stood in the doorway, her face hard. "I came to get Dad's fishing gear," she said, not quite looking at Cassidy. Adler said, "I should take it before she." Trailing off. "Before what?" Cassidy asked. "Before he leaves for London, the firm sending him to head the new international office." Autumn's voice turned sharp. "Congratulations, sister. You managed to drive him not just out of your marriage but out of the country." "Autumn, please save it." She pulled out her phone, holding up a screen full of text messages. "Dalton's wife sent these to everyone at the club. Every message between you and her husband, every hotel receipt, every little lie you told Adler while you were sneaking around." She scrolled through the messages, each one a fresh wound. "Look at this one. Missing you already. Last night was perfect. Sent on Dad's birthday. While we were all at his grave, you were with him," Autumn said. "I can explain." "Explain what?" "How? You're just like Mom. How you couldn't help betraying the best man you'll ever know." Autumn's voice cracked. "Adler loved you. He would have done anything for you, and you threw it away for a man who's hiding in rehab while you take all the blame." She thrust a thick envelope at Cassidy. "Here, the final papers from the estate lawyer. Dad's fishing cabin goes to me now. The trust fund reverts to the Kingston family. Even Grandma's jewelry has to be returned." Howard planned for everything. Reeves murmured from her seat. "Of course he did. He saw this coming the day Cassidy was born. Blood will tell. He used to say, guess he was right." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Cassidy, don't bother coming to any more family events as far as the Kingston family is concerned. You never existed." The doors slammed behind her, the sound echoing through the house like a judge's gavel. After Autumn left, Cassidy's laptop chimed with a new email from Marin, her former assistant. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but you deserve to know. Dalton's rehab is a $50,000 a month resort in Arizona. Eleanor is already planning his comeback tour. Talk shows, podcast appearances, a book deal about overcoming addiction and finding redemption. But that's not the worst part. We found his other phones, plural. There was someone at his gym, another at his children's school, even one of Eleanor's friends, all married, all happening while he was with you. Dalton had a system, Cassidy. The same restaurants, same hotels, same lines. I found receipts going back years. You weren't special, you were just next in line." "I'm sorry." "Mayor," Cassidy repeated numbly, "like I was just another project." "Of course you were." Reeves moved to her old dresser, pulling open the bottom drawer. She extracted a faded leather planner. "Look familiar." Cassidy took it, her hands shaking. Inside, in James's precise handwriting, was a dating history that mirrored Dalton's playbook perfectly. First meeting, always lunch, always public. Second meeting, drinks after work, mentioned marriage troubles. Third meeting, first kiss, let her initiate hotel selection, high-end discreet staff, room service, exit strategy, clean break when things get complicated. He kept notes, she explained. James was a surgeon. He approached everything methodically. Cassidy whispered, like it was a business plan. James was a surgeon. He approached everything methodically, Reeves reiterated. Howard found this when he hired the investigator. Want to know how many women came before me? How many came after? She spread out photographs across the bed. Different women, different years, but always the same scenario. James and expensive restaurants, hotel lobbies, charity events, always with a married woman. Always with that same practiced smile. 5 before me, Reeves continued. 3 during, 2 after that we know of. She picked up one photo. James at a medical conference, his arm around a colleague's wife. This was taken the week I told him I was pregnant with you. He said he was too busy to meet. Now we know why. Cassidy's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You don't know me, but I was with Dalton last spring. Same story. Unhappy marriage, instant connection, little Lumeridian sweet. He even used the same pet names he used with you. There's a group of us. You know, we needed a coffee shop downtown. All his ex-lovers, all destroyed marriages, all thinking we were different. Join us sometime. Misery loves company. Lauren. Another text followed immediately. P.S. Check his Instagram. Someone tagged him an hour ago. With trembling fingers, Cassidy opened the app. There was Dalton, looking tanned and serene outside the luxury rehab facility. The caption read, "Taking time to heal and reflect. Grateful for new beginnings. #blessed, #recovery, #new chapter." Eleanor had already commented, "So proud of you, darling. Can't wait to have you home." "He's already rewriting the story," Reeves observed, reading over her shoulder. "By Christmas, he'll be giving interviews about his darkness and redemption. By next summer, he'll probably be running men's retreats about ethical leadership." She pulled out another photo from her file. James receiving a humanitarian award just 1 year after abandoning them. The game never changes. Cassidy, only the players. The room suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in with generations of betrayal. Cassidy stumbled to her vanity mirror, but the face that stared back was a stranger's. Pale, haunted, with eyes that looked too much like James. Had Adler seen this resemblance every time he looked at her? Had he been waiting, watching for history to repeat itself? A distinctive chime cut through the tension, an email notification from Adler's personal account. His first direct communication since that night. Cassidy's hands shook as she opened it. "Cassidy, by the time you read this, I'll be on a flight to London. The house has been sold. Your things are in storage. The key is with your mother. I've instructed my lawyers to handle all further communication. I could list everything I found. Every lie you told, every night you weren't really working late, every lunch meeting that wasn't with clients. But what's the point? You'll just deny, explain, justify. Exactly like your mother did with Howard. I've spent the last 3 weeks dismantling every trace of our life together. Do you know what I found in your bedside drawer? A birthday card from Dalton, dated 2 months ago. To my soulmate. He wrote the same week you organized my birthday dinner. Looked me in the eyes and said you'd never been happier. I called Howard's old investigator. He remembered your mother's case, said watching you follow her path was like seeing a replay of history. Same restaurants, same excuses, same desperate need to feel special. Look at his face. Do you see any trace of guilt? Any sign that he destroyed a family? Did you ever confront him after he came back?" Once, Reeves' fingers tightened around her coffee cup. "I waited outside his office, wanted him to at least acknowledge you existed. Nobody said, 'Catherine, you need to move on. We both made mistakes, but I've found forgiveness. Perhaps you should try therapy.'" A sharp knock at the bedroom door made them both jump. Autumn stood in the doorway, her face hard. "I came to get Dad's fishing gear," she said, not quite looking at Cassidy. Adler said, "I should take it before she." Trailing off. "Before what?" Cassidy asked. "Before he leaves for London, the firm sending him to head the new international office." Autumn's voice turned sharp. "Congratulations, sister. You managed to drive him not just out of your marriage but out of the country." "Autumn, please save it." She pulled out her phone, holding up a screen full of text messages. "Dalton's wife sent these to everyone at the club. Every message between you and her husband, every hotel receipt, every little lie you told Adler while you were sneaking around." She scrolled through the messages, each one a fresh wound. "Look at this one. Missing you already. Last night was perfect. Sent on Dad's birthday. While we were all at his grave, you were with him." Autumn said, "I can explain." "Explain what? How? You're just like Mom. How you couldn't help betraying the best man you'll ever know." Autumn's voice cracked. "Adler loved you. He would have done anything for you, and you threw it away for a man who's hiding in rehab while you take all the blame." She thrust a thick envelope at Cassidy. "Here, the final papers from the estate lawyer. Dad's fishing cabin goes to me now. The trust fund reverts to the Kingston family. Even Grandma's jewelry has to be returned. Howard planned for everything. Reeves murmured from her seat. Of course he did. He saw this coming the day Cassidy was born. Blood will tell. He used to say. Guess he was right. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Cassidy, don't bother coming to any more family events, as far as the Kingston family is concerned. You never existed. The doors slammed behind her, the sound echoing through the house like a judge's gavel. After Autumn left, Cassidy's laptop chimed with a new email from Marin, her former assistant. I shouldn't be telling you this, but you deserve to know. Dalton's rehab is a $50,000 a month resort in Arizona. Eleanor is already planning his comeback tour. Talk shows, podcast appearances, a book deal about overcoming addiction and finding redemption. But that's not the worst part. We found his other phones, plural. There was someone at his gym, another at his children's school, even one of Eleanor's friends, all married. All happening while he was with you. Dalton had a system, Cassidy. The same restaurants, same hotels, same lines. I found receipts going back years. You weren't special, you were just next in line. I'm sorry. Like I was just another project, Cassidy repeated numbly. Of course you were. Reeves moved to her old dresser, pulling open the bottom drawer. She extracted a faded leather planner. Look familiar. Cassidy took it, her hands shaking. Inside, in James's precise handwriting, was a dating history that mirrored Dalton's playbook perfectly. First meeting, always lunch, always public. Second meeting, drinks after work, mentioned marriage troubles. Third meeting, first kiss, let her initiate hotel selection, high-end discreet staff, room service, exit strategy, clean break when things get complicated. He kept notes, she explained. James was a surgeon. He approached everything methodically. Cassidy whispered, like it was a business plan. James was a surgeon. He approached everything methodically. Reeves reiterated. Howard found this when he hired the investigator. Want to know how many women came before me? How many came after? She spread out photographs across the bed. Different women, different years, but always the same scenario. James and expensive restaurants, hotel lobbies, charity events, always with a married woman, always with that same practiced smile. 5 before me, Reeves continued. 3 during, 2 after that we know of. She picked up one photo. James at a medical conference, his arm around a colleague's wife. This was taken the week I told him I was pregnant with you. He said he was too busy to meet. Now we know why. Cassidy's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You don't know me, but I was James Whittaker's last affair before he died. Found your story online. You're his daughter, aren't you? History really does repeat itself. He used the same hotels back then that Dalton uses now. Same tricks, same lies, same endings. The worst part, minus 30 years later, I still catch myself missing him sometimes, missing how special he made me feel. That's the real curse, isn't it? Even knowing we were fooled, we still crave that feeling. Your mother probably understands. Ask her if she ever really got over James. Ask her if the ache ever goes away. Welcome to the legacy, Cassidy. We're all just chapters in the same endless story, Marie. The final pieces of the dress collapsed into ember and ash, but in the mirror, the reflection still wore it, proud and defiant. A reminder that some stains can't be washed away. Some legacies can't be burned through the window. Cassidy caught a glimpse of a familiar black car pulling away from the curb. Adler had been watching, waiting to see if this time finally the curse would break. The grandfather clock struck midnight, its chimes echoing through the house like funeral bells. In the mirror, the reflection of Cassidy in the burning dress raised a mocking toast with a phantom champagne glass, the same way she had with Dalton on that first night in that same hotel suite where so many women before her had sealed their fates. The dress may be ash, Reeves said quietly, but the reflection will always wear it. That's your legacy now. That's your curse. She dropped the photos into the fire, watching them curl and blacken. Your story isn't over, Cassidy, but the ending was written long before you met Dalton, long before I met James. We're all just playing parts in a tragedy that keeps repeating, generation after generation. Above them, in the mirror's dark glass, the endless parade of women in burgundy dresses continued their silent, laughter-welcoming parade. "Welcome to the legacy," Cassidy whispered. "We're all just chapters in the same endless story." Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.